Abuisa Commodity Brokers, connecting companies and creating business.
Hello everyone! Thank you again for the opportunity to update the glycerin market information in South America, especially from Brazil. It's good to attend the 20th Global Oleochem Summit. I'm Renan. I'm a specialist in oleochemical products at Abuisa Commodity Brokers, which creates, develops, and executes the best businesses for our clients in the last 36 years in the marketing of agricultural commodities. Starting with Brazil, let's talk a little about production, commercial partners, and market opportunities for the glycerin. It is worth mentioning that the national production of refined glycerin tends to grow with the forecast of new distilleries. Asia and the European Union are the main markets for Brazil, being responsible for absorbing a large part of Brazilian production. Out of the total exported in 2022, 78.5% was exported to Asia and 7.9% was exported to Europe, which has a greater demand for refined glycerin. If we consider only refined glycerin exports, the European bloc absorbed 17.7% of the total. News points out that the European bloc is increasing the consumption of ISCC certified glycerin, which until then was required only for oils and fats. Perhaps it is a new market niche, also focused on the renewable energy sector. In addition to demand having increased after the pandemic, there is news about the new markets that will demand glycerin, such as Brazil, which is studying the use of glycerin to improve the quality of pellets, solid fuels based on vegetable biomass. It means the addition of crude glycerin to biomass pellets for generating electrical and thermal energy in residential heating generators, which could be a niche market. I would like to address the relevance of Brazil in the glycerin market. According to more recent data, we have 69 installed factories producing biodiesel, thus generating glycerin. From each ton of raw materials at the plant, approximately 800 kilograms of glycerin will be generated. Therefore, the co-product of the biodiesel industries, the glycerin, is important in the financial results. According to the ANP, National Agency of Petroleum, Natural Gas and Biofuels, glycerin is equivalent on average to 9.1% of the volume of biodiesel manufactured. Our country has 13 biodiesel industries that have a distillery and therefore manufacture refined glycerin, the technical and USP grades. Overall, last year Brazil exported 486,000 tons of glycerin, both crude and refined. This number was very similar to that exported in 2021 and 2.21% higher than that exported in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. From January to May of 2023, approximately 197,000 tons of glycerin were exported from Brazil. In the second half of the year, from June to December, Brazil needs to export more than 290,000 tons to surpass the total exported in the previous year, which by the way was similar to the export in 2021. So the perspective is to surpass this mark to present real growth. Brazil exported just over 42,700 tons of glycerin in May, according to the most recent figures from the Ministry of Development, Industry, Commerce and Services, MDIC, in Brazil. This number is 3.2% below the amount shipped in April, which shows a stabilization in demand for the national product after very weak results in February and March. If we analyze the total shipped in January of this year, May showed a retraction of 8.17%. On the other hand, May of this year showed an increase of 13.93% in exports compared to May of last year. Now, if we compare January to May of last year, 2022, 190,000 tons of glycerin were shipped. So this year's volume is slightly higher at 3.5%. Approximately half of the volume was shipped through the port of Santos. Other ports such as Rio Grande and Paranaguá are also important for the shipments of glycerin in Brazil. Until the moment of the video, the official data compiled were up to May, and we can see a total of 145.41 thousand tons exported this year, which is 9.72% higher compared to the same period of the previous year. May had approximately 31.4 thousand tons of crude glycerin exported. As you can see in the chart below, to exceed exports 2022, it is necessary to move at least 210,000 tons. As for refined glycerin, the total exported until May of this year was 51.4 thousand tons, which is 12% lower than the same period of the previous year. May had 11,300 tons of refined glycerin exported. The challenge for June and July together is to count on at least 28,000 tons to grow the real volume compared to the last year. To overcome shipments in the previous year, the challenge for the second half is to ship over 81,000 tons. Here we can observe the price history of crude glycerin origin Brazil, both exports to Asia and negotiations in the domestic market. We can observe that in the first quarter of the year, prices remained firm in both scenarios. In the second quarter, there was a drop, but in the domestic market, prices remained stable, while for exports to Asia, and especially China, the downward movement was more pronounced, largely due to the retraction in domestic demand. As of the time of the video, the price for Asia is about $250 per ton. If we compare it with the average selling price in the domestic market, the equivalent for exports would be between $190 and $195 per ton. This price is ex-works factories. Analyzing the prices of refined glycerin, in the first graph, we have the monthly average volume exported by the main ports in Brazil until May. The main ports are Santos, Paranaguá, and Rio Grande. The May average increased by 20% compared to the January average. In May, the average was $590 per ton, while in January it was $488 per ton FOB. In the domestic market, at the beginning of the year, prices were high due to the low availability of raw material, the crude glycerin, which was traded at high levels. A reflection of this was that glycerin exports in the first 2 months of this year were very low, as we saw in the previous graphs, which was due to product availability. In this presentation, I will bring some figures from 2 other important countries in South America in the production of glycerin, Colombia and Argentina. Let's start with Colombia, our territorial neighbor. At the time of the video, many research sources presented official data up to April or May. So in the graphs below, we can see the total glycerin, crude and refined, exported by Colombia this year. Analyzing crude glycerin, according to official export data, the main destination was China with 75.59% of total exports, followed by Pakistan with 6.85%, Turkey with 6.02%, and India with 4.82%. As for refined glycerin, The main destination was Mexico, representing 49% of total exports, followed by El Salvador with 24.92% and Ecuador 8.68%. In general, refined glycerin from LATAM countries are traded intra-block. Now some data from Argentina, which is one of the main producers of agricultural goods in South America, and which has recently faced several economic problems impacting its production capacity. Here, we can see the total amount of glycerin exported by Argentina until May. In fact, the Q1 was very bad for exports due to low biodiesel production. Industries were left without production and therefore did not generate glycerin. Out of the total exported by Argentina this year, 43.81% of the volume of crude glycerin went to China and 42.72% to the Netherlands. As for refined glycerin, Argentina exported 36.8% of the total volume to Mexico, 23.14% to China, and 11.06% to the USA. In May, the volume exported was 45.22% below the volume exported in April, as you can see here in the graph. Finally, we do not see product supply from Argentina whose local biodiesel production has been at low levels, as there is no significant demand for Argentinian biodiesel at the moment. Between January and May, the price of crude glycerin fluctuated between $210 to $250 per ton FOB Rosario and San Lorenzo, and refined glycerin fluctuated at levels of $475 to $520 per ton FOB Rosario and San Lorenzo. Concluding the presentation, in the international market, demand remains at a slow pace, mainly due to the weak economies, in addition to the caution of buyers in large schedules due to uncertainties in the economic scenario of several countries and the drop in the commodity prices. In our domestic market, we have seen demand pick up more intensively, in addition to the fact that domestic production of refined glycerin tends to grow with the forecast of new distilleries starting in 2024. The European Union has been presenting strong environmental regulations in the interest of Brazilian industries, and exporting with ISCC certification can be a new market, strengthening business with an important commercial partner. Well, as every biodiesel manufacturer is also a glycerin manufacturer, the byproduct is of vital importance for the financial health of Brazilian industries that are looking for new markets to develop the glycerin exports. Once more, I thank you for the opportunity and hope to come back soon updating the market for upcoming months. I let my business contacts here in order to receive your next inquiries. See you next time.
Hello everyone, my name is Bruno Noronha and today I will bring information on the biofuel market in South America, especially from Brazil. After spending the entire year of 2022 with the mandatory mix in 10%, in March 17th, the CNPE, National Energy Policy Council, approved the plan to resume the biodiesel program. Starting in April at 12%, the plan foresees B13 for 2024, B14 for 2025, until finally reaching B15 in 2026. The recovery is slower than expected by the sector, since in the initial plan Brazil should already be operating in B15 this year. But it is positive that the government has started to move in this direction again, and it was enough to make manufacturers start making investments in the sector again. Companies such as Petrobras and BH have already announced significant investments in the sector. This increase in the mandatory mix also played an important role in increasing national production, which broke a new record. After more than 2.5 years, the plants finally surpassed the registered mark in March 2021. This current record was 640,000 cubic meters, and the state of Rio Grande do Sul continues to lead the national production of biodiesel. Petrobras is very committed to the topic of biofuels and has expanded the test with the addition of biodiesel to the marine bunker. One of the ships in Petrobras fleet will be filled with a mixture of 76% conventional marine fuel oil and 24% biodiesel. This initiative aims to validate the viability of using biodiesel blends in the naval segment. Petrobras will also launch a product called Diesel R, which consists of a mixture of regular diesel and soybean oil. The goal is to stimulate the national market for this product, initially with an addition of approximately 5% vegetable oil. Diesel R has physical-chemical characteristics similar to the diesel S10. And talking about investments in biofuels, we also see national and foreign companies such as Mubadala, for example, investing in the production of HVO in Brazil. As it was informed in the beginning of this presentation, the Brazilian state with the highest production is Rio Grande do Sul, and there the state government decided to increase the tax incentive for biodiesel plants. The ICMS, which is one of the local taxes we have, will be modified as an incentive police to boost the local production. This measure meets the demand of producers in the state who sought greater competitiveness in relation to the plants based in different states of the country. As you can see, the biodiesel sector in Brazil is growing. Tax incentives, Petrobras initiatives, the resumption of investments, and the predictability of the biodiesel program are boosting production and opening up new opportunities. It is a promising moment for the biofuel sector in Brazil. In Colombia, another important biodiesel producer in South America, the situation is also favorable to the sector, which currently operates in B10 but with intentions to increase the mandate to B11. In Argentina, the situation is not looking so good. In 2022, the production of biodiesel in the country grew by 11%, reaching a little bit over than 2.09 million cubic meters. This recovery was significant comparing to recent years when the production was actually decreasing. However, the industry is still far from the past production levels. The dependence on the international market, mainly on export to the Netherlands, caused negative impacts on the Argentinian industry, which still suffers from anti-dumping tariffs on the European continent and also in the United States, which has recently renewed the tariffs for 5 more years. Accordingly to the US, the tax system in Argentina is equivalent to a subsidy, and removing the tariffs could cause financial damage to the American biodiesel producers. Climatic conditions have made the current soybean harvest the worst in the last 23 years, which has generated substantial losses for the country. In early 2023, the biodiesel production in Argentina had an unfavorable performance as reported by Renan in his glycerin presentation. It was the worst first quarter in the past 14 years. Despite the difficulties, the domestic demand for biodiesel increased, but it was not enough to make up to the losses in the foreign market. In summary, we can observe that the biodiesel market in South America is going through different scenarios. In Brazil, there is a favorable environment with increased mandatory mixture investments and tax incentives, which boosts production and creates opportunities. In Colombia, there are also intentions to increase the mandate, showing a promising scenario for the sector in the country. On the other hand, Argentina faces significant challenges, such as dependence on the foreign market, adverse weather conditions, and losses in soybean production.
In order to have access to all our presentation, please scan the QR code.